So, hello, viewer. This is the Hybrid Fitness Summit, and my name is Ian Kay. I am the host of the Fitness Racing Podcast. In this discussion, we'll be looking into the ever popular debate of the best shoes for Hyrox and other fitness races. To help me with this discussion, I have James Muscart, aka JFit. Jay, thanks for making time for the Hybrid Fitness Summit.
No problem, anytime. Nice to be here.
Again, the pleasure is all ours. And I have to ask, Jay, what is your background in Hyrox? How many races have you run?
How many races have I run? 20 plus. We must be, if you include when you do multiple in a day, we're getting close to that 30 mark. I done a few where we've done, I've actually done one where we've done male pro and then came off the course and had my team shouting at me that we're starting the relay in about 30 seconds. So could I hurry up? So yeah, I've done quite a few at this point.
Done quite a few. You've seen it all. You've perhaps done it all. And you
I've
also
tried all of the
know,
different yeah, I've tried all of the different stages of it. I've done the doubles, I've done this open, I've done the pro, I've done the relay. Um, I like to try and just dip my toe in and see what's the most fun as well as competitiveness.
and seeing that you have seen and done it all, how many shoes do you own or have you tested for Hyrox events?
Once again, the number's got to be close to 20 plus. I own 20 plus shoes, which my wife is thrilled about. But also, I've tested significantly more over the years. I've been involved in Hyrox for about 5 years now, so I've probably tested closer to 40.
And you're kind of well known for probably the first ever video in what shoes to wear for High Rocks. And I know there's been various incarnations of that video. How many times have you recorded that video or similar?
I think I've got about four videos on shoes in particular. The very first one was just like I kept getting asked questions. I think generally people from who know me know that I like my trainers from when I was in triathlon. I was interested in them. What the difference was, what the new technology was, why one was quicker than another, what worked best. I had certain issues with mobility and things like that as I went through my triathlon career, so I kind of got into the shoes a little bit more. Definitely not a physiotherapist, but played around with a few different brands, a few different types, and people just started asking me. So I kind of got a little bit okay. I need to just make this consolidate this, and I took like the 8 pairs of trainers I had at the time, kind of tested them and made a video that was like, okay, this is a generic overview of like how to pick a trainer for you. It wasn't particularly like this trainer was the best and this one is the worst. It was these are the elements such as like drop height, stack height. Like these are the things that you should be looking at to make a decision based on your feet for this race. And some of the obvious things like grip, um, Metcons, nanos, things like that, are like if they should be or shouldn't be worn for this style of training, considering how much running, but also considering how much functional the work there is in a Hyrox.
So, without mentioning brands, what kind of features are you looking for when it comes to shoes to get you through a High Rocks event?
Me personally, I like something like a 6 to an 8 mil drop on a pair of trainers. Not like a racing flat, like a little bit old school. Racing flats are a bit less than that. But then also, I land more midfoot. Um, So I don't really look for like that 10 to 12 mil drop at the other end. So if you're more of a heel striker, probably looking more for like that 10 to 12. But I want something a little bit more designed for how I land on my feet. And then also I'm looking for something like, in terms of like aggressiveness for like, and there's two different things to that. It's are you looking for something for an all-round trainer, and that's going to be able to use for your training. Trainers aren't cheap. So like if you're looking for like I'm going to buy one good pair, or am I going to buy like me? I just like them. You're going to get a couple of pair, and these are for this or these are for this, and if you're looking for a racing trainer, you probably want I want something with a bit more of a rocker in the trainer, so it feels like there's a bit more propulsion to come off it. So that's what I personally for, but I would highly suggests that everyone is a little bit different, and not one shoe fits all.
As is often the case. Could you just explain that term a little bit about drop? I'm sure lots of the viewers already are familiar with it, but if someone's just watching this for the first time, what does a 12 millimeter drop mean compared to a 6 millimeter drop?
So it's the difference between the midsole and the heel of the shoe. So like the difference in like stack of how much like foam you're putting in there. So um, the more like the closer they are in number. So like a 0 mil drop would be like a pair of like Vibrams, like barefoot running shoes. Um, like you've got nothing in between. That's the most obvious way of describing it. Like you can see a pair of Vibrams, it's 0 mil. It's the same at the back as it is at the front. Whereas if you get like a I can't think of a good example, but maybe like an A6, like a well cushioned pair of trainers, you might have quite a difference between them at the back. So they might have a good on clouds quite I know quite well for it. They've got a really like the monster stack. They got this big stack in the back to really protect that heel. And if you're a heel striker, that's fantastic. That's something that you want to make sure you're giving yourself that cushion to be able to protect yourself and make sure that you're not damaging the Achilles and the knees because your natural point of stopping when running. Uh, your natural point of stopping anytime would be to put your heel down, put the brakes on. So that is actually like a when people have learned that technique, it's something that is worth probably trying to work out if you can come more midfoot because it's a more natural push off. But if that's a very long process. But if you're looking for something that is just protecting, give yourself that little bit more cushion, you want something that with more like a 10 to 12 mil. So really get that support that you need. But a big part of that would always be get yourself to a running shop get an analysis done, get someone to actually check your feet and where you land and watch your back in slow motion and see what's happening when your foot touches the ground. We get a lot of pronation and things like that, so there's definitely worth just going to get it checked by a professional. And I'm not a physio, as I said, so it's one of those things that I've played with this over time and what works for me. So I like to find something a little bit more around that 6 to 8 mil, which a lot of trainers are around 8. But it's worth looking at and just knowing yourself what where you land when you're on impact.
Absolutely. I think back in the day, I think Hawker almost changed the game when they brought out the shoes that looked like space boots. Do you remember them? This was almost a decade ago, and they had
Yeah,
such
yeah,
an aggressive stack, but it felt like you were running on clouds.
yeah, and like that's beautiful to run on, right? It's like it's depends what you're going for, and the technology has advanced so much. Like you've gone from that to like all the different types of foam, and I couldn't even tell you all the names of them, but there's so many different types of foam that is like energy return and how the responsiveness on it, and all the brands have something different just within the foam. Without even talking carbon plates. Like in the last few years, it's just kind of like escalated so much of what kind of everyday trainer to like a more aggressive return on the foam on the for from the stack height. So to see what is going to be best for you, but it depends what type of running you're doing.
No, absolutely. I think sometimes it's almost like you have to have a chemistry degree just to read the instructions on the shoebox.
Yeah,
Something that
there's what happened to trainers? What happened to trainers?
exactly. Something that a lot of people get a little bit obsessed with, particularly runners, is the weight of the shoe. What is your own opinion on this? Does weight of the shoe matter too much when it comes to Hyrox?
I would say for Hyrox, I wouldn't be too worried. Like the average finishing time of a Hyrox is 92, 94 minutes. Uh, if we're talking a pound or like minuscule amount of weight, like go to the bathroom before you race. You'd be fine. Same difference. I just I wouldn't worry too much on that. If there was a difference between two shoes, and one was significantly more comfortable, one I felt a little bit better in, one felt more like I had more retain on it, but it weighed, half a pound more than the other shoe. I'd be going for the one that felt more comfortable over. That difference is over a marathon. We could be talking like there's some difference there. Still, it would only be small. And that's the kind of difference that is the difference for people at the front of the race. So it wouldn't be something I would be worried about if I was running a marathon. But weight of a shoe is not something that's really ever came into my decision making process too much, especially when we get down to shorter races such as Hyrox.
That makes sense because Hyrox kind of fits in that mid range, doesn't it? Because weight matters for a marathon, it matters for a sprint, but for these middle distance events, probably not so much. What about grip? Because a lot of people, particularly newcomers, start out thinking they need a trail shoe and some real aggressive grip, or they're going to be on the sled push forever and a day.
Honestly, lugs on the bottom of a trail shoe are not going to help you run this race. Like um, it's on carpet, so if it's trail shoes, like you need something to really get into those lugs to be able to make it grip in, and that's not you're not going to get that grip on a carpet. You actually want more surface area to be able to spread the foot out and really get stuck in so you can ground it. But also, more importantly, the lugs on concrete floor while running around. That's not going to do any damage, but it's not you don't need it, and it's just not something I would be worried. I would definitely be focused on a nice, comfortable pair of normal running trainers. Grip is really important, and I actually think the lighter the athlete, not the shoe, the lighter the athlete, the more you need to play around with that a little bit in terms of trialing on the sled. Because as a heavier athlete, I'm putting a lot of force through the ground, and I'm finding that I slip less, especially on that push. I'm just driving my weight into it. Whereas really something with a lot less grip, if you're a lighter athlete, you're not producing as much force through it. I have seen lighter athletes. It seems more common in lighter athletes for their feet to slip on the floor as opposed to slipping out the back of the shoe. So lugs isn't something I would be concerned about. Never raced in lugs for. I've raced ultra marathons and all that kind of cross country things and all that in lugs. Definitely needed spikes and all the rest of it. But for Hyrox, not something I would be looking at.
No, absolutely. And as someone who accidentally wore lugs for a half and half marathon, which was half trail, half on road, lugs can damage your knees, viewers. So do be careful because they just make you run in an uncomfortable position when the ground's flat.
Yeah, it's that solid concrete when it's like if it's not able to dig into anything, it's actually not that effective. So it's not something to be overly worried about. I would definitely not be rushing out to buy a new pair of. If it's your first time racing and maybe it's not the time to be buying a new pair of trainers and you already have a pair of looks because you've done a lot of stuff like that. Okay, maybe if it's just the first time you just want to try it, not the end of the world. But I wouldn't be purchasing a pair for it. And if I could, I would probably be buying a normal flat pair of trainers.
Again, that makes a lot of sense. Irrespective of grip on the sole, any tips for avoiding losing a shoe on the sled push, which is quite uncommon, to be fair. I think more people worry about losing their shoes on the sled push than actually do lose their shoes, but occasionally you
Agreed.
do see people.
You do see people pop out the back occasionally. People will generally learn this as they do their training, and it's worth probably YouTubing. I can't think what it's called now. There's a term where you put it through. I used to do it for like cross country races. There's like a lock lace. I think it's lock lacing for your trainers. We used to do it for cross country, and we like there's things like that that you can type YouTube lock laces for for extra grip on trainers on YouTube. Honestly, if you put it through the hole that is usually empty when you get a pair of trainers, and then loop it round and go through the middle, thread it through the middle. It's a terrible description. You will find that actually you can lock those trainers down and make them even tighter. Um, do not cut off circulation. Like fair warning there. I've seen people do that way too tight, but it just gives you a little bit of extra support and keeps that lockdown is a little bit better to hopefully prevent you slipping out the back. But also, nice thing on things like that is a lot of people are doing like grip socks now, so you can get like a pair of grip socks. They just make sure that foot stays in the shoe, so it's less likely to slip out the back. So probably worth having a look at something like a pair of grip socks, and also the lock laces to really make sure that feet aren't going to slip out.
I guess we should also point out that it's important to get your shoes correct for your foot size. So perhaps get your foot measured properly because so many people, when it comes to shoes, it can become like an ego thing of if you're an 8.5, it's like, oh, I'm actually in a 9. But if you're an 8.5, wear a pair of 8.5 shoes and you shouldn't be
Yeah,
sliding around.
you definitely want to like my general rule of thumb with this, and I've it's been since for many years since I ran cross country in school. Like there's an element of you always size up a little bit because your feet are swell and expand and things like that. But we're talking like half a size. We're not talking like we're gonna. But honestly, I said it earlier about if you've got the capacity to be able to do this, the best thing you can do is go get checked by an expert. Like I don't think it's expensive. Like they generally try to sell you a pair of shoes. And remember last time I done it, it was more of it was a free exercise to be able to go in and just get them on a treadmill, let someone look at it, check your gait, make sure you're not rolling in, and make sure your feet are measured correctly for the right pair of shoes. Um, these guys are like the running shoe shop and places like there's plenty of these shops knocking around that it's worth going in and just, especially for your first pair, just make sure you're getting like the professional to check it over and make sure that is the right fit for you. And they can give you some information on why that's the right fit for you. And then from there, if you need another pair, at least you're armed with the knowledge to be able to say, I know I overpronate, or I know I land like this, or I mean, last time I got checked, unless you're 12 years of age, your feet size ain't changing that much. But you can go get like the correct sizing for you.
That's so important. And I was going to ask you about what about people who need support shoes? But I think you've answered that question, which is go and speak to the experts. They will know much better than me or you, Jay, about what's best
Yeah.
for you. Do you need support shoes? Do you need inserts? The experts will be much better.
And with inserts and things like that, a lot of the time you can do a lot of once the experts on that from a shoe shop perspective will be able to help, but even a physiotherapist would be able to really help with like um, that grip strength of your own feet in terms of are you do you have the support? Have you built an arch? Is your Achilles supported with actually like calf raises, soleus work, like that arch of the footwork? Is there exercise you can be doing to provide that little bit more support within the actual foot itself to benefit you when running? Because you'll get a lot of, if you're doing a lot of mileage, that arch kind of collapse. It's worth doing the physio, even prehab before really needing to worry about rehab. It's worth doing the exercise first and just checking that is there anything else you could be doing to. I mean, we're on our feet all the time, always. We they often get overlooked. It's for the sake of what it's worth. It's worth probably speaking to somebody and just checking like what are some simple exercises. You could probably YouTube it as well for some simple exercises to help strengthen your feet. But always worth just checking with a professional if there's something that could be done to, especially for your feet in particular, to just support them a little bit more and make sure that you're coming in with the best foot forward.
Exactly. And I personally suffer with high arches, which sometimes can lead to plantar fasciitis. And what I was taught was a can of soda or a can of beer. If you roll it under your feet like foam roller, it really helps at the end of any kind of run. And as Jay's showing there, a little ball as well. Never
Golf ball, tennis ball, like anything like that. Super. You don't have to go buy a fancy something like special. Like just get if you can at the end of the day. I mean, just rolling it out. You do want to be doing like some grabbing a tea towel with your toes and scrunching it, and then letting it go. Like some really simple like strengthening exercises will definitely also help. But like getting a tennis ball, a golf ball, anything like that, lacrosse ball, something that you can get under there and like just roll it out while watching TV. It's worth just finding those tender spots and carefully, trying to do a little bit of trigger pointing on them to keep your feet in the game.
But word to the wise viewer, never ever use one of the spiky balls, which are quite popular here in the UK. I used it once and then I couldn't walk for the next couple of days because I had tiny puncture marks all the way through the sole of my foot, which was not nice. But moving away from that, what about
I don't
super
want to. I don't
shoes?
want to move away from that. I want to know more about that. That's ridiculous. Why would you think that was a good idea?
I,
Uh,
I was young, but yeah, that's probably a story for another time. S- Super shoes like Nike Vaporfly, where do you stand on them when it comes to a Hyrox event? Because people have had mixed experiences.
Nike Vaporflies. Okay, so I love my Vaporflies, but I use them for half marathons. I've got Alpha Flies for a full marathon. Yet to actually do that one. But yes, there's when I use a Vaporfly for a Hyrox. No, I wouldn't. And um their old design used to be a point on the back. They changed the design and cut it at the back, so it's more like square at the back now, which would allow you to get it in the rower, which was one of my initial concerns. It wouldn't actually lock into the rower very well, and it was just you lost 20 seconds faffing around with it. I don't think they're the most stable pair of trainers. I also don't think um, they also they're quite narrow as a pair of shoes. I find they dig in quite a lot. Nike shoes are quite narrow. I find they dig into the arches of your feet quite a lot. Um, they're super shoes, but so light and so they're just not designed for a Hyrox. They don't have any the grip isn't great on them. I love them. I think they're amazing shoes, and the kind of shoes that I'm going to throw on if I've got 8 times 400 meters on a track tomorrow, like that, and if I need to almost change my um, psychology and my frame of reference. I kind of need to go. This one's got to be fast. Like they're the kind of shoes I'm thinking. If I need to feel fast and I need to have this mental thing in my mind of like this is it. This is almost that preparation. I'm going for the vapors. Like I'm going to think like this. These are the ones. But I have different shoes for Hyrox, so we get a little bit wider, so we get a little bit more grippy. So wider for balance as well, and like so we get a little bit more durable as a pair of trainers. Um, because there is so much, lunges, ski and row, and there's like so much more different movements than just running. But they were designed in line with that marathon, that sub 2 hour marathon. It's they've come from that world and they do exactly what they're supposed to do there. They are not designed for Hyrox. I'm not against them. If I see people wearing them on a Hyrox, maybe it works for them. Maybe they've got narrower feet than me. Maybe they're just that's what they've tested them and for something a little bit shorter um, with hybrid racing. But for a Hyrox, I just don't think they've got that. Um, I don't think they're the right ones for this personally.
I'd agree. If you are tempted to use them, listener, I would definitely go and try out all the movement exercises with them, particularly the lunges. People often get unstuck on the lunges when it comes to wearing super shoes. But you mentioned there, what type of shoes would you wear for your training runs, or do you wear a variety?
A variety. If I've got 20 plus trainers in the wardrobe, I need they're all for different reasons. So I for many years have used Adidas Ultra Boost for my long, slow, steady base runs. I've recently just been playing around with the On Clouds for the same reason. I'm just trying to see, actually, Adidas actually changed the design a tiny bit on the Ultra Boost. So I didn't quite like it. I couldn't quite put a finger on why they made the knitting a little bit tighter at the front. It wasn't quite as friendly for me for those long runs. But on clouds are great for, so far, I think are very good for those long, steady runs. No carbon, just everyday running trainer. Just want to get those base miles in, that zone 2 work, which is very regularly overlooked, but very important. Should definitely be doing that, heads up. And then tempo work and like threshold work. I'm looking for something a little bit more comfortable, but maybe with a little bit more reaction to it. So I actually quite like the Saucony Speed 4 for that. Like it's like a nylon plate. depending what the session is. But I like those Sauconys for that kind of faster threshold or tempo kind of work. It might be a longer one or something like a longer tempo effort, but around there. And then, as I said earlier, like you're talking pure speed, there's a couple of like pure carbon plated shoes that I'm like is more of a go-to. But all of these, I'm talking running shoes for for those type of work. But if I'm looking at compromised running, I'm looking at doing some, maybe running out the doors of the gym, maybe running on the treadmill in between lunges and all the rest of it. I'm playing around with things that I think um, will work for Hyrox. So I'm trying different style of trainers. I do like the Saucony. Well, I really love it. I think you'll see this a lot in the elite field as well. The Saucony Pro 3, but they've made the 4 now. It's not as beautiful with the Hyrox as the 3 was, and you can no longer really get the 3. Um, I've tried many times. The 3 is no longer really available. The 4 is better in the speed than the Pro for me. But then there's many other brands that are coming out with. I liked the A6 Metaspeed Sky was a great trainer for pure speed work, but I raced New York in them. Um, Such an aggressive pair of shoes, like just something that feels so fast. But they were one of the shoes that I felt was super slippy, and I don't really struggle with that at my weight. But if you're looking at one like a 5K or something like that, those A6 right up there for me in terms of fast shoes. But you almost have to play around with it, and I should have tested them better before trying to race New York in them. But you always have to play around with them a little bit and see if it works for you in the event. Now, I mentioned the Saucony, but also for me, one a big one is would be the Puma Nitros. I do a lot of my compromised running in the Pumas. I find them to be really a great crossover. I don't believe they're actually designed for Hyrox at this point. I do think they're actually working on a pair to be designed as one of their global sponsors. I think they are actually working on a pair to be designed for Hyrox. I might be wrong on that, but I like what they've currently already got is quite an aggressive carbon plated shoe with a lot of grip on the bottom. So they've kind of found something really well made for compromised running. It's not something I would want a half marathon in or a 10K in probably. I know some people do. Some people really like that, but I suppose if you're really going to buy one pair of trainers, it's what's an all rounder, and they do very much feel like a good all rounder. So yeah, a few brands out there with the different styles of training, a different depends what you're going for. I definitely wouldn't just have one pair of trainers. If I was going to buy two, I would buy something non-carbon for my steady, zone two work, even rowers and just you just don't need to have carbon plates on all times. And then I would have a pair of like base trainers or speed work trainers, so like the two pairs. Then you're looking for something a little bit more well-rounded, and maybe that is the Puma, maybe that is the Saucony. Um, that you have to play around with a little bit and see what is going to work for you. Once again, look at things like the drop on it, see what is a better fit for your type of running.
And that makes a lot of sense. And we touched on quite a few things there. I'm going to ask about pure strength work. Would you wear a pair of Metcons, or would you just wear your compromised running trainers?
No, I do wear a pair of I have a pair of Vibrams for the zero drop shoes. Which once again, I was talking about earlier about doing those like exercises where you're clawing the floor and trying to really work on your strength and you can feel the floor. That's something that I'd like to try and work on for myself, and that's something I've still got a lot of work to do on. And I find that Vibrams are very good at helping build that strength. I think Metcons are probably also up there for that. I do have a pair of Metcons and I do wear them um, like deadlifts and things like that. So Metcons or a pair of Vibrams like really good for like just outright strength work days. I mean, I don't mind wearing a pair of Vibrams for um, you know coming off coming off some deadlifts, coming off some squats, whatever it may be, and doing a very easy 5 minute jog on a treadmill. I'm not running in them. I have not built up that strength. People do. I know people are racing them, but that takes time to build up that strength. to be able to do that. So definitely wouldn't recommend jumping into a pair of zero drop shoes and just throwing out an hour run. But if you've got them on and you've got like a little 5 minute effort to do here and there in between the session, the working session, as long as it's steady and it's easy, I've got no problem wearing them for that kind of thing. But my outright strength, I'd like to be in something that's going to also challenge my feet, but also give me that feel of the ground. If I'm deadlifting, I'm trying to push the ground away and split it. I'm trying to push the floor away to really try and emphasize my technique. So I want to be able to feel the floor. If you've got a pair of 10 mil, 12 mils shoes on, all you can feel is clouds. I really want to be able to feel like ground. I think I'm driving it away and think about my technique and are the right things in mind to not only just to improve my performance, but also to just be careful of injuries and look after myself.
That's completely understandable. Moving back to shoe brands generally, new shoes can be quite expensive. Other than hiding the receipts from your significant other, do you have any tips when it comes to saving money when buying new shoes?
Best bet would be to buy last season's colours. If you're looking for a pair of, say you're looking at, I get offers all the time from like, say, what's that, running shoes or runningshoes.com. They send emails out all the time, and it's like the new Vaporfly 3. I'm using that as an example, even though we've just said don't use them for Hyrox. But say New Balance SV3 or SV Elite 3, something like that, like the New Balance one. They've just brought out the 4. I guarantee you'll be able to find the 3 at like a fraction of the cost because they're trying to sell the 4. The 4 is the new and improved, model. It's probably very similar. They probably just changed the color. They do it a lot. Like there's, especially Vaporflies. Vaporflies come out in this season's color, and last season's color is now they've gone from £250 to 120. Still not a cheap pair of trainers, but it's if you're looking to buy a pair of super shoes, it's definitely worth looking at last season's colors at least, and just seeing like even last season's model. If you look at them, I wore the New Balance RC Elite 2 at World Champs Vegas. Amazing pair of trainers. Love them. I'd wear them again. Can't get them because there's stuff for now the fourth edition is out. Um, but if they were anywhere, I'm sure they would be so cheap. And they're still carbon plated shoes. They're still, they got the grip on them, but the grip is great on them. They worked really well for my racing in that race. So yes, there's definitely some much better deals to be had if you're looking to buy a pair, but don't really want to spend £300 on a pair of trainers. And
That is
The Puma ones are also generally better priced in terms of value. They, I think you're talking about like 175 for a pair of the Puma Nitros. Um, which once again, I love the Vaporflies and things like that, but you are talking like 250 for a pair of for a brand new pair. The season's colors. Limited edition. It gets wild.
that is great advice. How often do you rotate through your shoes in terms of buying new pairs? Do you track the mileage of your shoes, or do you just look at the bottom and when the sole starts to become smooth, it's time for a new pair?
I don't track the mileage. I'm got pretty good at having a good feel of it. I can generally, as I say, I land more on my midfoot. I can kind of feel that lack of responsiveness from the shoe. I can sometimes, if I have me checking the bottom of the shoe for a while, sometimes I can feel a little bit in the shin. If you start feeling in the shin, it's that's them done for me. I'm not risking injury over a pair of trainers. Um, I don't track them because I do use so many different pairs for different things. It'd be hard to keep track of what done what. Um, but it's also good for me to. It means they last longer, right? I can have a pair of. I say if I've got 4 pair of trainers in rotation, they can last me 2 seasons. Like on the basis that they're only getting used once a week, and then one pair might just be for races for me. Like one like, but I mean, at the bottom of the trainer, yeah, definitely. If they start looking like wear and tear, They start looking a little bit smooth. If you're feeling it in your shin at all, if you put them on and you're like, maybe not just one time, but if you've put them on the last couple of times and they really don't feel very responsive anymore, I'm talking more carbon, because you should be able to feel that. It's probably worth starting to think, how long have I had these? And have I been doing a lot of mileage? If you've had them 6 months and you're putting in, 3 sessions a week in them, probably time to start thinking, is have these seen better days? And the problem is, I've literally, this sounds terrible. I've literally just gave 10 pairs of trainers to a charity shop, and they all look fine, like on the outside, but they were a little bit worn, too worn at the bottom. They're a little bit like lost the grip. So they're great for walking around. If somebody wants to just wear them for a pair of trainers, I look after my shoes. They're still clean. They still look good. They're still, fairly new brands and all that side of it. They may only be 6 months old, 12 months old. But for me, I'm not risking an injury over. They still look okay, and I like the colors. Um, it's it's worth just rotating them out if you've got any shin issues, or they're going to get smooth on the bottom, or you are losing that responsiveness.
Looking to wrap this up with our final two questions. Ultimately, what are your personal top three shoes for Hyrox and why? I know this is difficult. Maybe not and why. Just tell us your top three shoes for Hyrox.
Um, Alphafly, Vaporfly. No, I'm joking. Uh, I'd have to say the Saucony Pro 3. Sorry, everybody, because you can't buy them anymore, but they were my favorite. They're such a responsive pair of trainers. Um, really enjoying the Puma Nitros right now. And then my third pair, it'd probably be right now, probably the Speed 4, Saucony Speed 4 over the Pro. It feels a little bit closer to the Pro 3 than the Pro 4. So Pro 4, Speed 4, Pro 3, Puma Nitros. That would be not in an order, but they would be the three that right now are singing to me, um, that are working well for my compromise running.
As you said at the start of the show, that's what works for you. Everyone is
100%.
different. And with that in mind, what is the number one tip for anyone when it comes to picking their shoes for Hyrox?
So there's two things that are for me really. There's one is 90% of people who complete a Hyrox would be faster and better at Hyrox if they just ran a little bit more. It's 50% a running race. Let's not overlook the fact of how much running needs to be done. It will only improve your cardio, your zone two work, your compromise running if you're just a better runner. And that includes your skiing, your row if your cardio is just a little bit better. Obviously, I'm talking 90% of people. There's 10% of people who've just been doing this for years and are incredible at it. So very slowly increasing that mileage and becoming a stronger all-round runner is going to massively help. With that being said, I would therefore say the most important thing about picking a pair of trainers for Hyrox is picking a really comfortable pair of trainers for running. It's a 50% running race. Find yourself a comfortable pair of running trainers, that you're going to be able to run. For me, a benchmark is a Hyrox is somewhere between a 10-mile run and a 13-mile run, like a half marathon, 10 mile, half marathon kind of time effort. You should be able to kind of run for that period of time. So you should be able to run like a 10 miler in these trainers fairly comfortably. Because that's kind of how long you're going to be out there. Maybe more towards the 13 miles, depending on how long you've been doing it. But you need to be able to run that, and you need to be able to be comfortable in those trainers for that long. 50% of running race. Don't get caught up on the ski and the row. Like that's two stations that your feet aren't even used. They're just like locked in, and you're not too worried about that. Don't get me wrong, you can have better like metcons for harder plate push off on the row and things like that, but it's nuances when you get into the time domain that you're actually there. The rest of it is it's a small fraction of the race. If you can improve your cardio, you're going to be on your feet for that long. Get down to a running shop, or you know get a real feel for what shoe is going to work for you. But as long as it's a comfortable running trainer, you're going to be fine. And if you're just doing your first one or your second one, just try them out. Maybe next season you might want to look into the carbon fiber plated shoes. You might want to look into that. What's a little bit more energy return, or you might want to go down the rabbit hole, and maybe you'll be sending me a message soon asking me more about that if you've come down that rabbit hole like I've got. But it's not overly complicated. It's just find something that's comfortable. That's going to support your feet.
So speaking of that, Jay, how can people find you and find any of your advice about shoes or Hyrox generally?
Um, YouTube's probably still the best one. JFit on YouTube. I've got so many videos on Hyrox itself in general, like how I'm preparing, how to smash the wall balls, what are the rules on baby broad jumps, and obviously, of course, what shoes are best, and then also a couple of actual shoe review. Like I've done a review specifically on the Puma Nitros. I've done a review specifically on the Alpha Flies. That people can take a look at. If they're thinking, then they like the shoe, it might give them a little bit more information on if that in particular brand, it might be, can't remember now, it might be a 10-minute video just deep diving in on what I like or what I don't like about a particular shoe. So if it's something you're interested in for Hyrox, it's probably worth checking it out before spending, £200 on a pair of shoes.
And as you have for the last 30 minutes or so, that is great advice, Jay. And on that, I'm going to say goodbye, Jay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And goodbye, viewer. Remember to check out the rest of the Hybrid Fitness Summit discussions. There's plenty of good stuff going on all day. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye.